As you are joining us, why don't you type into the chat box, making sure that everybody, all panelists and attendees can see you. Give us your name and where you're zooming in from, so we know that you're here and that you can hear us. Just give us your hellos, if you would. Hey, Fort Worth, Arena.
And just a reminder to make sure that you do all panelists and attendees so everybody else can see who else is here today.
Yeah. It was. All right, a lot of Texans here.
And people from Florida.
Good to see you, Miami. That's good. Hey, Naomi, New England Aquarium. Seacoast Science Center. Cool. Hey, Gabe, Los Angeles. Cool. Well, I guess we'll get going. Thanks very much for being with us today. Very appreciative of that. I'm Dan Yaeger, the Executive Director of the New England Museum Association, and this is a great opportunity for us to take a little time out from our homebound days and spend a little time together doing a little mindfulness and self-care and so forth. Heather Riggs is with me today from the NEMA staff, riding shotgun. And Heather's going to help triage questions and help us with the webinar a little bit. So just sort of some of the housekeeping here today. We've got a chat feature going, and we also have a Q&A feature. So a little bit later in our time together, we'll have some opportunity to interact with doing some Q&A, and hopefully I'll be able to answer your questions. Use the Q&A box for that, because it's easier for us to tease out what the questions are and the like. There'll be a couple of times that I want to engage you in a little conversation as well, some ideas and the like. Use the chat feature for that purpose, and we'll scan that. But again, make sure that you toggle into all panelists and attendees so that we can all see what you are saying at this point. The structure of the day is I'm going to start out. We're going to do a little bit of a guided meditation to get us all kind of centered and grounded, and then I'm going to riff a little bit on some things that are coming to mind for me, and then we'll do a little Q&A, and if we have time, we'll do another little closing meditation on the way out. So hopefully we'll feel a little better coming out than as we are coming in. So to start out, I've got a couple of polls here, and I'd like to see where we are as a group. So the first question is, how are you feeling today versus last week? Are you feeling better? Are you feeling worse? Are you feeling about the same today versus last week at this very time?
Dan, I'm not seeing the poll. Are people answering it?
Nope, not yet. So
okay.
I'm going to relaunch the polling and allowing panelists to vote. So there we go. Can we see it now?
No, is it aligning to attendees to see it?
Yeah, everybody can't see. The poll is not visible. You know, this thing is.
It happened to you the other day too.
Yeah, you know what's up with these Zoom polls. All right, so it says attendees are now viewing questions. Well, there we go. Still not visible. All right, so do this in the chat box. This is sort of easy to see. Just tell me, are you feeling better, worse, or the same as you were last week? Now here's Tiffany, same to worse. Wait, I'm not doing degrees here. But that's all right.
Okay, I was, Dan, I was able to get it online for you.
Oh, there we go. So now we got voting going. Okay, there it is. Okay, cool. Hi, Gail. So we got better, looking good. A little bit Any other votes here? Better, worse, the same? Okay, I'm gonna close out this poll. I'm gonna share results, and so we are feeling, for the most part, the same. 41% feeling about the same this today versus last week. We've got 32% feeling better. That's a good statistic. And we've got 26% of the folks feeling worse. Okay, so that's a good handle on things. And now I've got a trickier question. Let's see if this one works. I'm gonna launch this one. And this question is, Heather, can we see this one?
I could see it. People can see it. So.
What issue most troubles you today? Your health or health of loved ones, the economy, my usual bag of rocks, or the other? And by bag of rocks, I mean whatever stuff we always have floating around back there. What issue most troubles you today? Okay, so most people have voted here. We'll round it out and polling. So the economy is number one, 33% bothering us, followed by our health, 27%. My usual bag of rocks really weighing in there at 21%. That's a given. And other is 18%. So the economy is definitely our trigger point here. So we're going to stop sharing and we're going to go. All right, so that's a good. So Dan, you should have included coworkers on that poll. Coworkers being, hey, Vivian Lee, coworkers meaning their health. I kind of meant that with, health in general, you and others, but coworkers meaning they're bugging you, maybe, I don't know. We can touch base on those things as well. So it's very interesting. I guess, as we're entering week 4 here, it's Tuesday of week 4 for most of us in our home confinement. Yeah, some of the observations of, what I'm noticing with people that I'm talking to have kind of migrated from being sort of the immediate what's going on with moving our staff and so forth, and how are we going to do this thing, to being health related, like, oh my God, this thing is going to really concern me. And that still continues to be a huge issue. But yeah, the economy, I think, is really weighing on our minds. Whether our jobs are in place or not. How many in the chat? Has anybody actually on this call today been furloughed or laid off or anything? Because it's kind of the fear that a lot of people have, but it's actually happened to some folks. I have for at least a month. Wow, very sorry to hear that. Well, yeah, so it's a big thing. And I guess, the greatest thing about this opportunity to gather together is it allows us to sort of have some time away from those concerns and worries and the like. Hopefully everybody is able to do a little of this on their own on a regular basis. As I mentioned the last time, if anybody was with me, I've had a practice for quite some time, and it started out as, sort of calming and how to center myself for my day. And it's really grown, a lot deeper into that in terms of then that into being much more of an aid to me in how I view life and how I approach the day and the like. So join with me for a little bit of guided meditation. And, for those of you who are on this call the last time, we did a little meditation sort of centering on the breath. The breath is always the classic anchor for meditation. And I got thinking about that though a little bit in this era of COVID. This past week, I was reading a lot of stories in the newspaper about how, people are very aware of their breath now in somewhat a troublesome manner, because the virus itself causes shortness of breath. And I realized that with some people, the idea of either being sick with COVID has caused shortness of breath, which causes potentially some anxiety over thinking about, using the breath as an anchor. And some people that don't have it, but are full of anxiety about the virus, there's also an issue with like, oh my God, I'm feeling short of breath. And of course, that's an anxious sign of anxiety, certainly is shortness of breath. So I thought what we do is actually come up with an option. So if, thinking about your breath and using that as an anchor for your meditation is somewhat troubling, we'll come up with some other options. And so one of the options, I guess, that I'd like to start out with is thinking about the sounds. So let's all sort of find a nice comfortable position in our chairs or in our cushions or wherever you happen to be, and pull your posture up erect, and I invite you to close your eyes if you want to, if that helps, and just settle yourself into your space here. Settle yourself into the room in which you're sitting, and focus for a minute just on sounds. What is it that you hear? You might be in a spot that's, sort of urban, and you hear some urban type sounds. You might have the window open, you hear people walking by or kids playing, something along those lines. We're not hearing a lot of traffic these days, but focus on the sounds for just a moment. Your room might be very quiet too, and you'll notice then the sound of the silence. Sounds are very interesting, though, as an anchor for meditation. Notice the sounds of the bowl, for example, as the sound rises and it passes away. Then be aware of all those sounds that you hear outside or inside your house. They rise and they pass away. Notice the intensity of the sounds. Notice the different parts of the sounds. Notice as it begins and as it crescendos and then passes away. Try to notice the sounds as just sounds, not identifying them with anything in particular. Try not to identify it as a bell or a gong, or you hear my voice. Don't hear it as Dan's voice. Just hear it as waves that are passing into your consciousness and then out of your consciousness. So you begin to anchor yourself into the sounds using your ears as a way of centering yourself, finding your place in this moment. And now I invite you to become a little bit more aware of your body itself. Another anchor for meditation is very often doing a body scan. Become very anchored in your body. They call this embodiment, because so often our thoughts are drifting and we're not inside our bodies, and being able to anchor ourselves in meditation in the body is a very important method of doing this. So just notice the sensations that are in your body right now. Focus first on the place that your feet are hitting the floor, for example. Feel the pressure if you're sitting in a chair. And work your way upwards a little bit, doing a scan of your body. Be aware of your ankles and your calves and your thighs moving up. Feel the weight of your body pushing down through gravity to your pelvis, where you're rooted on your chair or your cushion. Feel the positioning of your hands, if they're on your legs or if they're clasped together with your hands, and then move up through your wrists, your forearms, your elbows, your biceps, your shoulders, and up to your neck. Scan up your torso, beginning with your belly. Move your way up into your chest, the heart area, on up to your neck, and then higher to your face. You feel your chin, your eyes, your ears. Scan all the way up your forehead to the very crown of your head. So notice the sensations that you've got in the different parts of your body. Maybe there's a place that needs some attention, perhaps a little backache or your neck. That time of day, you've been up for a while and you might have some aches and pains. Pay attention to those. Notice the sensations, your body sensations, as they arise and they pass away too, just like the sounds that you heard. They arise for a moment and then they pass away. Think about your body with gratitude. Think a little bit about all of these muscles and your bones, all of the intricate inner workings of your body, and express that gratitude. Think a little bit for a second and say thanks to your body. Say, thank you for protecting me. And acknowledge, I'm okay for now. Thanks for protecting me. I'm okay for right now. I'm okay. I'm good. Thank you. And then I'd encourage you to think a little bit about your heart in particular, not the organ, but your heart, your compassion, the emotions. Dial into some of the emotions that you might be feeling or have felt during the course of the last hour or so. What are those emotions? You might have had some anger, might have had some frustration, might have had some love. Pay attention to those emotions and notice as they also arise, pass away. They come and they go. And express your gratitude to those emotions as well, noticing them. And say, thank you. Thanks for protecting me. Thanks for being part of me. I'm okay for now. I'm good. right now. I'm very grateful. And then take a minute and become aware of your mental status, your mental state. What's going on in your mind right now? During meditation, very often we get distracted, as we do not in meditation, by our thoughts. We very frequently have thoughts constantly arising and passing away, and we usually don't recognize those. But focus your awareness right now on your mental state. Do you have thoughts that are coming and going? What are those thoughts? What do they look like? Are they words and stories that you're telling yourself? Are they images? Focus your awareness on those and let them arise and pass away. A lot of times we spend time making plans during meditation. We strategize, find ourselves drifting into all the things we have to do, all the busyness that we've got in our lives. And that's necessary. It's necessary to do plans and strategies and the like, but when they arise in meditation, just allow them to arise and pass away, recognizing them sort of temporary mental phenomenon. Don't need them right now. Plenty of time to plan later. But show some gratitude for them. Show some gratitude for the fact that you do plan things out. You're able to strategize. You're able to think. You've got a consciousness that's able to help you through the day, and say thanks. Thanks for protecting me. Thanks for looking out for me. I'm okay right now. I'm good. So recognize these things, your body, your emotions, and your mind. These are part of you, but they don't define you. They don't define you. They're not completely what you are. They're part of you, but not completely. And it's part of the big mystery. So as we finish up our brief little meditation, I invite you to open your eyes if you want to. And before you completely come back to us, I want you to remember a couple of things. If you want, put your hand on your heart, which is what I usually do, and think the words to yourself. I am whole, I'm complete, and I am enough. I'm whole, I'm complete, and I am enough. So often we don't remember that. We feel very broken, especially in times of stress. I'm whole, I'm complete, and I'm enough. So I guess the first thing that I wanted to talk about is a little bit of about emotions in the time of crisis. And I invite you to use the chat feature to kind of share a little bit. I'm curious about what emotions in particular you've been feeling over the last couple of weeks or so, just to kind of get a sense of this. I kind of was joking about the bag of rocks. We all kind of carry around sort of ongoing, our troubles and what we need to sort of lug around with us. But this time of crisis has really caused, I think, a lot of really unusual emotions in people, and sometimes it catches us off guard, like, wow, where'd that come from? And we're not completely cognizant of it happening, but we start recognizing that we're under a degree of stress that we've never had to face before. And we're all kind of making this up as we go along. What are the things that we're feeling, and how do we deal with it? So chat a little bit. Tell us what are you feeling? I know this is somewhat personal, but the things you feel able to share with our group. I'm very curious. Is it anger? Is it fear? I'm imagining we all have a lot of fear. Sadness. Yeah, thanks, Claudia. Appreciate that. Waves of immense sadness at times. Anxiety, absolutely. Confusion over where to direct my attention and how to stay structured. Yeah, overwhelmed. How many of us have had find ourselves in peevishness at our roommates? Roommates meaning, it could be a spouse, partner, it could be families, it could be kids. Imagining some of us are at home with kids, finding ourselves peevish with them, hiding under a rock and joining the mosses. That's frustration is a big one. Frustrated and angry about others not taking things seriously. Yeah, not that I'm ill, but I could be. Yeah. I think, yeah, a lot of when we see people being somewhat cavalier about it, and we ourselves are taking it seriously, we feel very judgmental about those folks, feeling as though, they have a direct hand in extending the misery. And, it's a difficult thing where, we're trying to do our part, and we know that everybody else is, potentially not, and they're having fun out there in the world, and we're not. Guilt for not being in as bad a situation as others. Yeah, that's the survivor's remorse uh, thing, where you've got folks that are, really doing terribly, and we're hanging out here, we're doing our thing. So, well, so that's, thank you very much for those feelings. I know that some of us are feeling lonely because there are, many of us that don't have families and so forth. And so as much of a pain as the family might be at home, what do we do with the kids and all that stuff? There are people that are completely alone and they don't have a lot of support. And so, we have to be thinking very empathetically of them as well. But an awful lot of emotions that are coming to the fore. And part of it is, the trouble that we've got is like, dealing with them. We don't have our usual escapes. In some ways, we can't just go and socialize. We can't find our circle of friends and go to the bar or whatever, and it becomes very difficult. I'm sure. Yeah, here's Emily. Yeah, feeling fear and anxiety for the museum field in general, and some guilt at feeling secure in my employment. Yeah, a lot of us, of course, are used to going to work. We're museum professionals, and really, we a lot of our bag of rocks, so to speak, on a daily basis. We find a way of working through our issues and whatever things are going on inside of us by work. We usually work. Very often we overwork ourselves. When we're feeling anxious, we work more and we try to work ourselves through things to sort of mask what's going on inside. We don't have that outlet right now. We do at home, but we don't go to our work. And some of us are displaced in our work. Those of us who work, say collections and doing the things, or certainly visitor services and we don't have that outlet right now to go to work. So how do we deal with those emotions? It's very difficult. times of crisis like this can also, though, be times of transformation. And that, I think, is something that I've been kind of riffing on a little bit in my own head about, what are the opportunities that we've got in this time of crisis? If you're a history fan and you read history as much as I do, you certainly notice that um, during times of crisis, whether it be war or other times of stress, leaders sort of emerge, and some folks rise to the occasion, so to speak. And you think of that, it's a time of transformation for people, though, not just leaders and so forth emerging, but individually. It's a time for hope, and it's a time for inspiration potentially, and certainly compassion is something that needs to emerge out of a time like this. So these are emotions that are sort of the positive emotions that we want to cultivate. We want to try to deal with the negative emotions that are there, the fears and the anxieties and the anger perhaps, and the peevishness and loneliness and some of those things that we've got. We need to deal with those, but we also want to cultivate the more positive ones of hope and compassion and inspiration and love and all of those things. So I guess I wanted another question then for you in the chat here is have there been times in the last couple of weeks that you've been inspired? And if so, who's inspired you? Has there been something that's been inspirational to you? And it could be something that you've done yourself. Have you inspired yourself? Like, wow, I didn't know I had this in me. Ways of connecting with people or compassion. It could be a large thing or a small thing. Give me a sense of what you're inspired by at this moment in time. We're all noodling this around, huh? Nobody's inspired? Here we go. Creative solutions to problems. Yeah. Delivering groceries and meals to seniors. Good job, Gail. Nice. Seeing everything blooming again. That's very inspiring. Changing products to fit the times. Yeah, breweries and distilleries to hand sanitizers. That's pretty cool. Setting 3 tasks a day to show myself I can get things done. That's cool. Vivian Lee says, inspired by the rebirth of kindness. That's always great. Yeah, creative solutions, neighbors and their kindness. Good news media. Yeah. A community in Vermont coming together to help. That's awesome. Yeah, we've definitely had in our museum field, I know that one of my inspirations has been, in fact, just us as a field springing into action with these really interesting ways of adapting social media and online platforms and the like to actually create content, reach out, try to connect and engage with our audiences. That's very inspirational. And we did this almost second nature, which is, I think, a beautiful thing. There's not been, we certainly didn't plan for this, but all of a sudden, boom, we've all mastered Zoom, or at least trying to, and using it in ways to, be very, very creative. How to engage people and the like. One of the people that I read about, been reading about, and very overwhelming to me. I think he's one of the greatest heroes. I don't know if you guys have heard of Jose Andres. Have you heard of him? He's a celebrity chef, owns a bunch of restaurants in New York and I don't know where else, a bunch of locations. But more importantly, he created about 10 years ago this nonprofit called World Central Kitchen. And look him up, Jose Andres. He's got some unbelievable videos. He's like quite a character, very energetic, hugely charismatic. But his mission is I guess he's a disaster junkie of sorts. He and his bunch, they go into places that have been met with the disaster, and they basically cater. They literally feed everybody that's in need. And I think he came out. He really captured a lot of attention during the wasn't Katrina, which is the one in Puerto Rico a few years ago. But you know, he came to the rescue there, and he's doing a lot of meals right now in New York City and in California, I believe, and some of these hot spots. And he was, I mean, sort of the first on the scene almost, with the cruise ship. I think it was in California, Oakland. And he was serving meals to the people that are stranded on the cruise ship. And it just strikes me as, of, you know, his organization is one that, you know, they're serving a need, but there's this incredible amount of well, compassion. What motivates somebody to do that? Compassion, of course. And there's this incredible amount of bravery that goes into it, because of course in this situation you're actually, you know, putting yourself in harm's way, so to speak. And certainly leadership, when you think about that, you know, basically what Jose and his group is doing is kind of working around whatever dysfunction is happening in the delivery of services from the traditional agencies, government, federal government, FEMA, and so forth, and all the craziness with trying to apportion equipment to the states and localities and the like, which is, you know, very frustrating to watch how dysfunctional that is. And he's coming in and just simply saying, I'm doing it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do what I do best, feed people, and I'm going to do it on a mass scale and make sure that they're, you know, they're well fed. So a lot of his work in New York, for example, is feeding the medical professionals. And it's so interesting to think about, because medical professionals are they've elected this path in their life. This is, you know, what we do. We heal people. We have to respond to emergencies and like that. Jose doesn't have to. He's a chef. Why would he do this? Why would he put himself in harm's way? And it's something that I find that's part of the inspiration, I think, in a sense, because you don't have to do it, but you do that. It's so compelling. And what can we do, you know, in our places to sort of respond to that ourselves? You know, being not really a hero, although you can consider folks like that a hero, but you know, what's our inclination? How do we take this moment and look at it as a way of possibly being transformational, about doing something, whether it's a small thing like helping people in one way or another, staying connected, reconnecting with people that you might not have, you might have lost contact with. Those are, you know, forms of compassion that you have based on this kind of a thing. But we can make a difference. And I think that maybe that's the essence of leadership in some ways in a situation like this, because we're all leaders, whether or not we're the CEO of our thing or the head of a department or whatever. We're all leaders in our lives. And how can we, you know, use this as a moment to really get out of our own protective shells here, which we're naturally inclined to do because of the fear and anxieties and so forth, and really kind of transform those, transmute those, repurpose those into something that shows our compassion inside and helps us out. You need kind of a calm and steady mind in order to do that. You have to recognize the hope that's deep within each one of us. You know, we do have hope. We can't lose sight of the hope that we have. And you take that and then, you know, you say, well, we will survive. And my actions do in fact count. I can make a difference. I'm able to help relieve suffering, my own and other people. That's really the essence of meditation, and helping you then focus on how can I do better. I think it's really easy to shrink back these days into the, you know, protective shells, our defensive posture and so forth. But our happiness ultimately, I think, depends on how we recognize our own compassion and use it in service to others. There's a cool poem. I shared a poem the last time. I'm going to share another one. I don't have the book. I'm using my phone here. But it's from Johann Goethe and his famous play Faust. It's a poem within the play. It's kind of famous as the basis of you can dream it, you can do it sort of thing, Walt Disney. But here's the context for it. And it says, lose this day loitering. 'Twill be the same story. Tomorrow and the next more dilatory. Then indecision brings its own delays, and delays are lost, lamenting or lost days. Are you in earnest? Seize this very minute. What you can do, or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius and power and magic in it. Only engage, and then the mind grows heated. Begin it, and the work will be completed. So it's a little inspirational thing, but I think that that's one of the things that's important for us these days, is to make sure we don't get too involved into the negativity, don't get too involved in our own sense of dread and anxiety. Allow those feelings to happen, as we did in our meditation. Allow those emotions to rise and pass away, and understand that, but also use this as an opportunity. Be thinking about what it is that I can be doing. What can I do to make a difference right now, whether it's, in my work from afar, if it's in my community, if it's with my family, if it's with my friends and loved ones, if it's with strangers. What is it that I can do? I might not be going out and serving meals to people. I'm not perhaps directly on the front lines of helping medical problems of people with COVID, but I can do something. And what is it that I can do to inspire myself and to inspire others? So let's think about that. Okay, so let's have some questions. The lines are now open. Use the Q&A box if you would, and let's chat a little bit about what's on your mind with whatever's on your mind.
Dan, while people are typing in the Q&A, did you want to just write the author's name for that poem? Vivian Lee was asking about it.
Yeah, well, it's Johann Wolfgang von Goethe.
I'm not going to try to spell that.
No, Goethe, and it's from Faust, and it's usually, you can just Google the two key lines is what you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. So I would do like Goethe, dream, if you can dream it, you can do it. That was Walt Disney.
Got it.
It's been appropriated a bunch of times. Walt Disney said, if you can dream it, you can do it. Other self-help people have said, things along the same lines. You are what you think about, those kinds of things. Yeah. So no questions. Oh my God.
We have a quiet group today, so you get to keep chattering.
What do we have to? Do I have to make you meditate again? Come on. No. What's on our minds? What are we having trouble with? Let's get down with it. Don't make me call on you, anybody. Who do I know that I need to call out here?
I think in some ways we're starting to settle in a little bit more than your last one, or it feels like I'm settling in a little bit differently. Everyone's so zen, they're accepting the current situation with peace. There we go. Here's a question. What is that? What are some recommendations for keeping some of the anxiety of everything happening or generally at bay, adding new ritual to the day? Well, thanks, Claudia. First of all, I guess I would point out that the trick is not necessarily to keep it at bay. Anxiety is going to happen. And the more you try to push it down or deny it or gloss it over or find some kind of coping strategy that's from the outside, the less you're actually able to cope with it, I think, in the long run. Ultimately, I think the strategy has got to be, you got to heal and not deal. Because when you deal with it, it's just simply, all right, I got to deal with this at the moment. The anxiety is too much. I got to do so. And that depends on your personality. You might pick up a glass of wine or 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever. You might find overwork is your thing. I'm going to deal with anxiety, but it's just, putting my head into work and trying to forget about it. And that doesn't work. I think that, the thing that I've learned that works for me is actually being able to acknowledge it and to rest with it, to provide enough space for that anxiety to just simply say, okay, I'm anxious, I get it, and this is what I need to deal with. There's a great technique that was developed by a few folks in meditation. A person named Tara Brach, B-R-A-C-H, is one that she wrote a book called Radical Acceptance some time ago. And I think it was in that book that she came up with a strategy of RAIN, R-A-I-N. And when you deal with difficult emotions, it's the R is recognize the emotion, just simply note that you're having this emotion. A is acknowledge it. Okay, yes, I have it. You're accepting it. Yes, I have it. Investigate is the I, which is, you know, not so much where is this coming from or whatever, but just simply investigate what it feels like in my body, where it's resting and so forth, and what it's doing. And then N is the original calculation, or the original postulation of this was non-identifying, just like, okay, this is not me. This emotion is part of me, but it's not me. Later, she has developed this idea that it's nurturing. You're basically circling that with a little bit of love. You're showing yourself compassion. So the anxiety that you feel, just let it be. Acknowledge it and say, yes, this is what I've got, but, you know, I'm going to watch it float away, as we did in the guided meditation. You know, these things arise and then they pass away. And if you're able to do that, you'll find that you're better able to heal from it, not just deal with it from external methods and so forth. How do we, oh, well, you also said mindfulness during team meetings. Yeah.
It's
well,
actually, it's a different Claudia.
Different Claudia.
Different Claudia, yep.
So mindfulness during team meetings. I don't know what's happening in these team meetings, but I imagine that those are stressful affairs, at least by you asking that. I think that, you know, when you use mindfulness with other people, I think one of the key things is ultimately to listen, to learn how to be a really good listener. And you don't have to talk all the time. One of my problems, I talk a lot. I have worked on that quite a bit, where you are able to, you know, not just keep talking and bring your brain out into the open, but actually give yourself some space to listen to what people are saying. And I think that's one of the big things during team meetings. A lot of times, if you just observe what's happening, you kind of take yourself out of the picture a little bit and watch what's happening with body language and how they're saying things, and whatever you see, a whole lot of messages that are going on. So whatever the issues you might be facing in those team meetings, sometimes they're very heated, differences of opinion and so forth. You find the ability to find space for those differences and navigate those a little bit better. I think a lot of us are, you know, very easily triggered, and, you know, you feel as though somebody says something and you now have to say something back and so forth. And if you can find that gap, to be mindful and just resist that for even a minute. Think to yourself, do I need to respond to this person in this particular way because they disagree with me or whatever? I think that that's, you know, a very helpful thing in any sort of group setting, because, you know, team meetings means you're all on the same team, you're fighting for the same things, and you want the outcome that's best for whatever it is, your museum or your department or whatever the case might be. Your interests are all in the same place, and you got to keep that in mind. The methods to getting there might be a little bit different, but you're all sort of focused on the same thing. Hope that's helpful. How do we find a balance? Right. Yes, Heather.
Do you want me to go to the Q&A, or do you want to?
Oh, well, no, I'm good. I'm good with it. I'm reading.
Okay.
I can read it.
Okay.
How do we find a balance in staying updated on the ongoing national policy conversation without being overwhelmed by the rhetoric and news? Yeah. So, Allison, you know, all I can give you is my perspective. I've really cut back on my intake of everything because I've found that, you know, why trouble yourself with troubling news when you don't need to completely? I've always been of the mind that, you know, an educated person, connected person, I'm a leader, I have to keep in touch with the news. That's true to a degree. You do not have to be in touch with the news every hour or every 30 minutes or whatever the case might be. And this is one of those things that I mentioned, strategies for dealing with anxiety and so forth. Sometimes it's booze and sometimes it's overwork or whatever. Sometimes it's actually tuning into the media and trying to, you know, that's now a distraction, so I'm not all freaked out. But you find, of course, the media is freaking you out even more because there's all sorts of, you know, how many people are going to die projections and how terrible the economy is going to be. And you start finding yourself, in that case, sucked into the rabbit hole, feeling worse and worse and worse. So the strategies that I use are, I generally check the news first thing in the morning, and then, at the end of the day. And I really try to stay away from the news in the middle if I possibly can. There are some days that I just put away the phone, put away the computer. Weekends, give yourself a break from that, because the news is going to be there. And, here we are in our houses. You don't have to worry about the weather too much, about your commute. You don't have to, why do you need to, what news do you need that potentially is going to suck you into it? The same thing with social media, of course, too. If the more you limit your time on Twitter and Facebook and whatever, you're probably better off. But try to develop some strategies to be mindful of what's going on inside of you when you read this stuff. Maybe it doesn't affect you, but if you're anything like me, be mindful of what it does with your, your bodily reactions, your mind, your heart, all that stuff. Okay, if we do get furloughed, what do you recommend to do to stay sane, since we can no longer work or keep busy? Well, yeah, you've asked a big thing there. Well, first of all, clearly, I want to acknowledge your concern of being furloughed, and I don't mean to seem like I'm making light of any of this. These are very heartfelt things, and I really do feel such a great degree of sadness and sorrow and compassion for people and all of us. It's a very, difficult time, and it's a difficult time to have us envision being in a situation that's different than what we're used to. I think part of the problem, the issue, whatever, of this entire situation is it's caught us off guard. It's caused us to go from being just, we do our daily thing, we were in a great economy before this, we were humming along, everything was going along, and all of a sudden, boom, it drops like this. And now we're left with all this uncertainty. And so we don't know how to cope because we hadn't really planned about it. And those of us that use work as a way to stay sane and whatever, that's our focus, it's our identity, this is what we do, we're potentially going to lose that. So the question, anonymous attendee, is, how to stay sane. I mean, first of all, is to disidentify with your job. I mean, you have to realize that, your job is important. It's your livelihood. It's, what you do to make money, and that's important because you want to eat and so forth. And those are big concerns. But I think a bigger issue behind this is the notion that we're going to lose our identity, and that's equally troubling. The idea that I am an education person at a museum, I'm a museum professional, I work in XYZ museum, I do this in the museum. These are the ways that we define ourselves. And the more you can recognize that those are part of your life, but they're not you, they're not everything. So when you lose parts of yourself, you don't lose yourself. You are your whole, and you're complete, and you're enough inside. That's it. You're not your job. You're not your emotions, your body, or all those things are part of you, but they're not you. And I think if you can keep that in mind, it's going to make it a little bit more palatable. Sure, it's difficult to lose your job. You got to figure out where's the money going to come from. You have to have faith and so forth. But you also have to recognize that it's not you as you. You can't take it personally because everybody's potentially in the same boat. And you can't identify yourself with just your job. You're a lot more than that. I hope that helped. I know this is a tough time for you. And Kristen, what are some of your favorite guided meditation resources you would like to share and recommend? Well, first thing is I'm pretty low key and old school. So I know that there are a whole bunch of Headspace apps and that type of thing, which for some people are, they're worth it. They're some of them cost you money. You have to pay $70 a year or so, and I've heard that those are good. I don't particularly use those. I have a little meditation timer on my phone that I use when I in meditation that gives me an interval and so forth, and you can pick out little sounds and so forth that mark the intervals, the beginning, the middle, and the end. Very helpful, especially in days when I got to go to work and I can't just drift and be in my head, whatever. I have a schedule to keep. But then when I'm in meditation, the timer is absolutely essential because then I don't have to worry about the time. When I'm doing it without a timer, I'm like, I wonder what time it is now. I've got to get going. So anyway, find a timer. The one I use is called Meditation Timer. It's very simple and it's free. The other thing I picked up, which you might want to look at, is another free app. Is Plum Village. Let's see, what is it called here? I just picked it up actually a few weeks ago, which I thought was pretty good. Plum Village is the Plum Village app. It's the meditation center of the Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, but Plum Village is in France. And they've got a really a good bunch of guided meditations and contemplations and a few other things on that. So it's a good app. Another great resource that I've been using a lot lately is, I mentioned Tara Brock, and she's terrific. She's got a website and a lot of Dharma talks and things that are really good. And another person that I really, really admire is Jack Kornfield, and that's Kornfield. And check his site out. As a matter of fact, I should say some of the guided meditation that I did today, I kind of picked up from one of his, which I thought was really, really great. But tons of resources out there that once you get into it a little bit more, you can really, expand, your practice through some of these free resources or, minimal costs and the like. But a lot of free stuff going on right now, specifically around the pandemic. It's like Jack and Tara came up with a package for doing like home retreats and home, specific messages for this particular time of the pandemic and some of the things that we're fighting at the time. So hopefully that's helpful. Dorothy, any tips or strategies for boosting staff morale and building much needed camaraderie during this difficult time? Yeah, it's tough to do when you're distant. I think that's even, and Dorothy, I don't know if you're an ED or, department head or whatever the case might be, but it sounds like, you're responsible for that morale. I think the most important thing is, well, from a practical standpoint, make sure you're keeping in touch, not just with the team, but also individually, checking in on people individually and making sure that they're okay and they feel connected. And what's happening behind the scenes and so forth. I think that's really kind of the most important thing, because people in their houses right now naturally feel a lot different than they do when they're together in the museum or wherever you happen to work. And so that's one thing, is just keeping everybody together. I think that, emotionally, it's very important to set the right tone. I think that, absolutely leaders have to be able to lead from a position of hope and compassion and inspiration and so forth. Because if you've got a lot of panic going on in your own head, it communicates we're screwed. So what am I doing? So as a leader, you really do have to you have to be transparent. You have to be honest, of course, but ultimately you have to be able to communicate that sense of hope. It is going to be okay. And we have to keep in mind that, ultimately this is something, face it, it's a catastrophe for us, both from a health standpoint, individually, our loved ones are jeopardized, and the economy. This is a moment in time, but we're going to make it through. We've made it through thousands and thousands of generations of people here on Earth, and we will too, because of all this great creativity and inspiration and folks that we heard in the chat, and my guy Jose, and whatever. These are all models that we have to point out, and I think that's really kind of the big thing. Think of do this exercise. Who's inspiring to you? Who's inspiring to your team, your staff, and have that conversation, and how can they be inspirations to other people? I think that's kind of the ultimate challenge in a moment like this. Well, we're at the end of our hour, and I am very grateful that you've been with us today. I hope that this has been helpful. Helped me out, of course. I love talking and chatting with everybody, and of course people have told me I can talk a dog off a meat wagon, so I love to love to talk and relate to people and so forth. And it's difficult for me, an extrovert, to be here in my place and not being able to interact with you all personally, but this is the next best thing. We'll do this again at some point. Absolutely look out for another one of these, because I enjoy doing it. I'm glad that you could spend some time with us, especially those of you from outside our region. Thank you so much, and hope everybody's doing well. Stay safe, stay in touch. We'll have this recorded and on our website if you want to look at it again, and tell your friends to tune in. And very grateful. Stay happy, everybody. It's going to be okay.
Thanks, everybody.